Hello, everyone. A very good morning to all of you. I am Dr. Belinda George, an endocrinologist working in St. John's Medical College. And today I'm very happy to be here to be part of your Science Fest, the Biologic 2020. And as an endocrinologist, I'm here to deliver a lecture to you on diabetes awareness. So let's get on with our talk. So, first of all, let's define what is diabetes. So, diabetes is nothing but it refers to any situation where the glucose levels in the blood is elevated. So, for whatever reason, if the sugar levels in the blood is high, then we refer to this condition as diabetes. As you may be aware, there are many different forms of diabetes based on what is causing this elevation in blood glucose levels. However, the commonest form of diabetes that we see is called type 2 diabetes. And today we will be exclusively referring to type 2 diabetes with regards to our lecture because that is the common garden variant that we see often in our clinical practice. So, we will start off by looking at the burden of diabetes, the global burden of diabetes. In this slide, you can see that across the world, the prevalence of diabetes is quite high. You can also see India and Southeast Asia in red color, and you can notice that the prevalence currently is around 11.3%. Now, you may think that 11.3 doesn't sound like a very alarming figure, but then when you look at the Indian population and when you look at absolute numbers, because our population is very high, the absolute numbers are alarmingly high. And that is what you will see in the next slide. Here you can see that if you look at India, it's actually ranked second with regards to the total number of people living with diabetes. And that is because of the larger population of our country when compared to other countries. We are second in this table. The only country above us is China, and there are some prediction models which suggest that we might be able to overtake China. But the hope is that we will improve our awareness programs, we will improve our prevention campaigns, we will improve our better therapy campaigns, etc., which will help us not to become the diabetes capital of the world, but diabetes care capital of the world. And that is the mission or vision, so to say, that the Endocrine Society of our country has. So this graph, this picture basically shows you the numbers, how they have increased over the years. So this is the International Diabetes Federation, which has put out these figures. They gather data from across all the countries, and the first IDF data or atlas was put out in 2000. 20 years down the line, you can see how the numbers have climbed up in exponential fashion. And there are two red dots on top, and both of them refer to future predictions. And if they are to be believed, the scenario in 2030 and 2045, it's going to be even worse than how it is now. So it's truly very, very important for us to try and break this chain of this exponential rise of global burden of type 2 diabetes. Now, why are we so worried about diabetes in general? So what, let the sugars be a bit high? Is it going to cause any problem? So whenever healthcare professionals think about intervention in a particular disease or a particular condition, we take into factors, we take into account two main factors. One is morbidity and the other is mortality. So mortality means because of having this disease, by virtue of developing diabetes, are you going to lose a couple of years of your life? Are you going to die prematurely? If that is the case, then we need to intervene and set things right so that you don't lose the number of years that you are supposed to live. Similarly, morbidity is not just the number of years that you live, but the quality of life that you have during those years. Is it going to be tremendously compromised? If that is the case, again, we have reason to intervene and ensure that your quality of life remains well. So let's look at a couple of graphs, just kind of explain to you why the mortality is actually different in patients with diabetes. So this particular picture shows you patients who have come with a heart attack or a heart disease. Among the patients who have come to the hospital with heart disease, if you separate out the ones that had diabetes and did not have diabetes, you can see the number of people who died. That is the blue line. The people with blue line had diabetes and died, whereas the people with the red line are the ones who did not have diabetes and died. You can see that diabetes distinctively raises the mortality graph separately, and clearly this means that diabetes is a factor that drives premature mortality. If you look at literature, the literature is filled with data like this. So, as healthcare professionals, we have absolutely no doubt in our minds that diabetes is a killer disease. But unfortunately, it is not always easy for the public to understand this concept, because when they develop diabetes in the early stages of the disease, they don't really feel any discomfort or any difficulty, and it's very difficult for them to grasp the fact that this problem, which is just a little bit of elevated blood sugars without giving me any discomfort, can actually be a silent killer. Now, if you take diabetes and put it across any disease in the world, you will see that mortality is increased for all of the diseases when they have underlying diabetes. So, this graph shows you that irrespective of the cause of death, death from any cause in patients with diabetes, with type 2 diabetes, versus patients without type 2 diabetes, and again you can see that the graph is widely separated, and patients with type 2 diabetes are at increased risk of dying from whatever the cause may be. Like I told you, you take any disease, tuberculosis, put it where diabetes versus no diabetes, you will find that people with diabetes will have a higher risk of death. The current pandemic that we have, I have put a representative graph of that for you, the COVID 19. So, mortality associated with COVID 19 and people with and without diabetes, again, you can see the red line stands for type 1 and the blue line stands for type 2, and you can see that if they get COVID 19, they're likely to get a more severe disease and likely to have a more fatal disease if you have underlying diabetes. So, I hope I have convinced all of you that clearly there is a link between mortality and diabetes, and which is why it is aptly called the silent killer. Because when you often do not realize that the underlying diabetes is what is driving you towards the mortality, you think, okay, but then because of diabetes, they had heart disease and that's why they died. Because of diabetes, they had developed an infection, that's why they died. But the underlying factor is type 2 diabetes. So it's very important for us to recognize this and try and prevent type 2 diabetes, or if you already have diabetes, try and keep your sugars under control to the best possible method. Now we will look at the next factor, which is morbidity. Now, in order for me to make you understand how diabetes causes certain organ damages, I have just put very, very simple figures. So, here we will go down to some very basic science, what you remember, I'm sure, from your class 12 and school science textbooks. So, if you remember, cells, cells are the fundamental units of life. Every organism is made up of small cells which build up and make up the entire organism. And it is inside these cells that the entire metabolic process is happening. In order for the cell to function adequately, the cell needs energy. Where does this energy come from? This energy comes from glucose. Where does the glucose come from? The glucose comes from the food you eat, either at the time that you eat, or if you have eaten earlier and if your body has stored it, it will be released. If you're not eating, the glucose will be released from the stores for every cell in the body to use. So, how does a cell receive glucose? This glucose is circulating in your blood. So, as you eat your food, the glucose gets absorbed into the blood. Then this blood circulates to every organ in your body. it reaches every cell, and each cell will take up the glucose from the blood. So there are different ways in which cells can take up the blood glucose. So here you can see two different types of cells, cell 1 and cell 2. Cell 1, you can see that there is a gateway for the glucose to enter, whereas in cell 2, there isn't any mechanism, it just diffuses inside. So cell 1 is what we call regulated glucose uptake, which means if the cell has had enough glucose, if the cell has received adequate amount of glucose, it will cut off this gateway and ensure that no further glucose comes in. It says, I've had enough, you can go elsewhere. Cell 2 is not like that. Whatever glucose is there outside, it will keep on entering cell 2. So that is the difference between the various organs that get damaged in patients with type 2 diabetes. So you can see in the next figures, in someone with type 2 diabetes or any diabetes for that matter, the blood glucose levels in circulation are quite high. However, when it comes to cell 1, after taking in what it needs, it blocks the gateway and says, enough, I don't need any more glucose, please go elsewhere. Whereas if you look at cell 2, it is unable to regulate it, and so more and more glucose keeps entering the cell, eventually causing a lot of damage over time. So what exactly are these cell 2 in your body? It is what we call endothelial cells, and this is again an experiment showing you the same thing. The top graph shows you muscle cells, so you can see that as the glucose surrounding the cells are increased, it does not remain high. In fact, the glucose uptake comes down. However, if you look at the second graph, which is highlighted in blue, you can see that the glucose uptake remains constant based on the medium glucose. So if the medium glucose is high, the cell takes in more and more amount of glucose. So this is what will end up damaging these particular type of cells. These are what we call endothelial cells, and if you remember them, they are the ones that line all your small blood vessels. So which is why when we look at diabetes complications, we have it divided as microvascular and macrovascular. Microvascular just means that damage occurring to very small blood vessels, and because of that, organs are getting damaged. So there are some organs which are highly susceptible to this kind of damage from high blood glucose level. One is the eye. So you can have retinal damage over years because of uncontrolled blood glucose, and that will end up with blindness over time. The other main organ that is usually affected in patients with diabetes is the kidney. So again, damage to the kidney over time will present as kidney failure, which has a lot of other issues associated with it. The last organ which is affected by these small blood vessel damage are the nerves, particularly the nerves which go down and supply sensation and other factors to your limbs. So, because of loss of sensation and weakness in your lower limbs, you are highly susceptible to get diabetic foot, what we call as diabetic foot, which means you may have injuries, ulcerations, and eventually you may end up losing your foot. So these are the three main microvascular complications. And if you look at data from the West, you will realize that in a developed world, blindness, the leading cause for blindness is diabetes. For kidney failure, the leading cause for kidney failure is also diabetes. And the leading cause for amputations of your lower limb, non traumatic, which is not related to accidents, is also diabetes. So in the developed world, where they do not have other factors like nutritional deficiencies and infections which can cause all these complications, diabetes is the leading cause. And we are not anywhere behind. The incidence of diabetes related complications are very high in India as well. We will also just look at what the macrovascular complications are. So, similar to the small blood vessels, even the large blood vessels can get damaged, and this may lead to heart attacks, strokes, and also blood flow blockage to the limbs, which again will add on to the risk of amputation. So these are the main complications of diabetes. There are many more, but these are the fundamental ones or the common ones that we see. but these are quite dreadful complications. These are complications that we do not want any of our patients to develop. So, if you look at all of these that I've listed for you, blindness, kidney failure, foot ulcers and amputations, heart attacks, stroke, all of these complications significantly add to the morbidity associated with diabetes. If you develop any of these complications, it becomes very difficult for you to to continue a productive life, and your quality of life is likely to dip tremendously. So, this is what will contribute to the morbidity aspect of type 2 diabetes. So, I hope I have been able to convince you that when it comes to diabetes, it significantly contributes to mortality, it significantly contributes to morbidity, and hence there is a clear need for us to intervene and set things right, either before you develop diabetes or once you've developed diabetes. At least do the bit so that we will prevent complications from happening. So, what do we have to do? We have to identify patients with diabetes, number one, and after identification, we have to treat them properly. Okay. So, how do we identify patients with diabetes? Who has diabetes and who should be screened for diabetes? So, there are certain symptoms that can happen when people have very high sugars, but what I want you to remember is that all patients may not have these symptoms. Very few, in fact, develop symptoms suggestive of high blood glucose levels. Often, patients are detected when they screen as a random checkup, as a random health checkup, and then they figure out that they have diabetes. If you look at data from the West, 50% of patients who have diabetes remain undiagnosed until they develop a complication. So it tells us that screening is inadequately done. We are missing a lot of 50%. One out of every two people with diabetes, they're not aware that they have diabetes. And if they're not aware that they have diabetes, how are they going to take the appropriate steps to prevent the morbidity and the mortality that comes along with diabetes? So, what is the first step and the first take home message for you is that everyone with diabetes may not have symptoms. Definitely, if you have symptoms, screen yourself. Even if you do not have symptoms, it is important that we check periodically to see whether we have diabetes or not. I will tell you who, when, and how. So, who should be checking their diabetes? Should all of us check every day for diabetes, whether we have developed diabetes or not? Who should check and how often should we check? So, depending on your risk for developing diabetes, of course, as the risk increases, you should check more often, or you should at least check once if you feel that you are at high risk of developing diabetes. So, age is the biggest risk factor. As you age, your risk of developing diabetes increases. So, anybody above the age of 45 years, at least once in their lifetime, they should check to see whether they have diabetes or not. Even if you do not have any other risk factors that I'm going to tell you about now, just crossing the age of 45 is a good time to screen once for diabetes. If there is any past history of having high sugars, in women, this is very commonly seen in people who have developed diabetes during pregnancy. So, if there is a history of diabetes during pregnancy, then this is a patient who should be screened every 3 years for diabetes, irrespective of the age. Similarly, for men, if you have had some kind of diabetes which was transient, you took steroids for some other disease and then there was transient elevation of blood glucose levels. So, these are little clues to tell you that there is a susceptibility for you to develop diabetes. Even though today you do not have diabetes, that it was a transient high blood glucose which has gone into remission. It is possible that you will develop diabetes in the future. So, it is a good practice to check once in 3 years or even once a year. Now, the other major risk factor for developing diabetes is obesity. In fact, diabetes and obesity, they go hand in hand and they're often found together. So, if there is obesity, again, it becomes important that you screen yourself for diabetes. So, if you have even one risk factor along with obesity, then definitely, irrespective of your age, you should screen yourself for diabetes. What are those risk factors? If you have any family member, first degree family member, which means mother, father, brother, sister, If you any of them have diabetes, go get yourself screened, irrespective of your age and irrespective of your weight. As Asians, as Asian Indians, we are a high risk ethnic group. So that means all of us, if we have obesity, should be screening ourselves for diabetes. If our physical, I mean, if our lifestyle is such that we are sedentary workers, we do not have much physical activity. Classic example is doctors. So if you do not do any additional physical activity, your lifestyle is going to be a high risk factor for developing diabetes. Of course, there is something called insulin resistance signs, which you may see quite often. So, if you have blackish discoloration of your skin around the nape of your neck, in your underarms, on your knuckles, etc., these are all signs of high insulin levels. So, this is a situation where you would go and screen yourself once for diabetes. Again, if you have other health issues like hypertension or high blood pressure or high cholesterol, these tend to occur together. Just like I said, diabetes and obesity go in together. Even hypertension, cholesterol, all of these diseases generally occur together. So, for this reason, if you have one, then screen yourself for the other disease. Now, we will look at what is the meaning of obesity. So, how do you check yourself for obesity? You can calculate what is called the body mass index. It's very easy, weight in kilograms by height in meter square, or you can just put it into a Google calculator and it will calculate for you. The number that you're watching out for is 23. If your BMI is above 23, then technically you're overweight and that puts you at risk for developing diabetes. So, if you're overweight plus any other risk factor, we have to screen ourselves for diabetes once. Uh, so here I have just put out, very rough estimate of BMI. So if you're 150 centimeters, that is your height minus 100, will roughly tell you your a weight that is okay for you. So if you're 150 centimeters and 50 kgs, your BMI is well within the normal range. If you're 160 centimeters and 60 kgs, you're just about in the overweight range. And if you're 170 and 70, you're in the overweight range but almost going close to obesity. So a quick way of assessing whether your weight is proportionate to your height, is to subtract 100 from your height, but it's a very rough estimate. It's very easy to calculate the BMI using online calculators. So go ahead and do that. How to measure the ways? Another way of checking whether you are obese and at risk for developing diabetes is to look at your waist circumference, because the obesity of diabetes is very specially kind of clustered around your waist. So if you have a, a flat, I mean, if you do not have a flat belly, or if you have a protruding belly, then you're likely to have higher risk of developing diabetes. So you can use a simple measuring tape and take your measurement, and the cutoff that you're looking for is 80 centimeters in women and 90 centimeters for men. And if you cross that, again, that puts you at high risk of developing diabetes. So go ahead and screen yourself once. So this is a questionnaire put out by the ADA, and you can see that this basically asks you to enter the same factors that I told you earlier, which is how old are you, have you had diabetes during pregnancy, do you have anybody in your family with risk of diabetes, have you ever had high blood pressure, how is your physical activity, and what is your weight category. So this gives you a rough assessment. If your score is above 5, you're at high risk for developing diabetes, so go screen yourselves. Now you have screened yourself and found that you do not have diabetes, you're in the safe zone. So what should you do? Should you forget about it for the rest of your life? No. It is good if you're at high risk, which is probably why you've screened yourself, and it is a good practice to screen yourself every 3 years. The reason why we say 3 years is not because you cannot develop diabetes in the next 3 years. In fact, you can develop diabetes next month if you've screened yourself today. But remember, I spoke to you about the cells and the high blood glucose levels being exposed to the cells being exposed to high blood glucose levels, causing damage over a period of time. This damage usually happens over many years, to the tune of 5 to 10 years on an average. So, which is why we think that even if you develop diabetes tomorrow, you've screened yourself today, you've developed diabetes tomorrow, 3 years of undetected diabetes is probably something which will not create a lot of havoc in the organs in your body. That is the fundamental idea behind saying screen every 3 years. This is basically meant for screening policies for countries, so that, when we talk about screening policy, we have to analyze both cost and benefit, right? So this is basically cost benefit analysis, and which is feasible without spending too much money. However, you're free to check even more often than that. If you think you have to check every year, go ahead, absolutely check once every year. Now, even if you did not have diabetes, if you have scored yourself high and you decide, if you fall into the high risk category, it is important that you adopt a healthy lifestyle and change your lifestyle. However, what to do if you already have diabetes? So, number one, the most important thing if you have diabetes is to have regular follow ups with your doctor, because the target for each patient will be different. So, you have to have a discussion with your doctor, identify or know what is my target, what is the target, how much should my blood sugar be, what are the tests that I have to do, and what is the target that I should keep it in, and try and not just achieve. It's very easy to achieve it initially, but the problem is over time you lose interest in maintaining your target. So it's important to maintain your targets with time. Go back to the doctor for regular checkup, because that is the greatest motivator for you to keep maintaining your targets. Of course, the doctor will take care of the rest. They will screen you once a year to see if any complications have arisen, and of course they will ensure that if there is any complication, that is taken care of. I just want to emphasize on one point here, because a lot of the patients we see often think that not taking medicine is good, because they're very reluctant to start medicine, saying if I start medicine then I'll never be able to stop it. But again, I want you to go back to the picture of the cell, which was exposed to high blood glucose levels, and not extremely high, just higher than normal blood glucose levels over a period of time. So here, elevated blood glucose level over time is a key factor. So if you do not get your blood glucose down to normal or to the target that is set for you by the doctor, then eventually the complications will catch up. So this our target, our aim when we treat and when we identify diabetes is to get the blood glucose down to normal, and not to either stop medicine or get off medicines or delay in starting medicines. So the target has to be, or our aim has to be very well clear in our mind. So just one tiny slide on what are the lifestyle changes that one has to make. Physical activity, extremely important. It's important that even young people who are not at risk for diabetes develop a habit of exercise every day. Just like you eat, drink, and sleep, make exercise a part of your daily routine activity and stick to it for the rest of your life. Dietary modification. For youngsters who are at risk for diabetes, we don't really want you to stop eating everything, but eating everything in moderation is key to maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Sleep is an often neglected and undermentioned risk factor for developing all these metabolic diseases. So remember, even in your younger days, to get adequate amount of sleep. The minimum amount of sleep for an average adult is 6 hours. That is the bare minimum. The ideal is at least 8 hours. So try and get sleep for at least 8 hours per day. Stress avoiding is better. I mean, it's easier said than done. Everybody will have stressors in their life, but I think ways to tackle the stress. So practicing some form of meditation, exercise is a great stress buster. So all these things, if you can include it in your lifestyle, that will definitely help. Stress worsens diabetes control and your risk factors for getting diabetes as well. And like I told you, obesity is a huge factor in developing diabetes. So particularly for women, time periods like pregnancy, lactation, etc., are very vulnerable to gain weight. So it's important for us to watch our weight during those times and ensure that it's not going out of control. So that brings me to the end of my talk. So this is the blue circle, which is a symbol for diabetes put out by the IDF, and basically it says it's unity in trying to. So everyone's coming together and trying to control diabetes and its complications. So let us break the chain of diabetes by uniting in our fight against it. And thank you so much again for having me for your Science Fest. It's been an honor and a privilege to deliver this lecture to you. I hope you had a few takeaway points from my lecture. Thank you again for listening. Bye.